All right, folks, Bitcoin is almost at an all time high. But the question for all of us is when will altcoins follow? Are they going to follow directly when Bitcoin hits the all time high? Or will they actually delay for a while? And have they actually started going up? Well, obviously, like they did start going up like 2 weeks ago and then they just came back down. Bitcoin dominance is still at over 63%. So obviously it hasn't started while Bitcoin is almost at the all-time high. So let's actually look at past relevance on charts and do some chart analysis. Now this is going to be chart analysis both on the price and also on Bitcoin trends on Google. So I've actually isolated, the last year. So essentially, we started going up this time, obviously around 4.9, 4.7, but this time is not complete. So we have to look at last time, which was fortunately within the last year, back last November, October. If you look at the Bitcoin chart, I think we can point to like right here on October 26th at $67,000 that we started to actually go up. Now, we did actually go up to 70 and then come back down to 69, but I think 67 and then like after 69 we just went straight up to like over 100k. I think like right here about October 28th or October 25th is really when we started to go up. You could say, yeah, we really started to go up like way down here, but we were still like kind of like way down here in the dumps, and we actually did have like a lot of like ups and downs before we got to like October 26th, and that's really when we started to go up. You could also say, I guess, November 3rd, but I'm going to say October 26th because that's like the last curve. And even like on November 3rd, when we dipped down, it was still about 2,000 points higher, 3,000 points higher than October 25th. So October 25th, 2024 is when we started going up for Bitcoin. If you look at XRP, obviously, we're going to take a look at XRP Cardano VeChain for the altcoin signals. I don't think we really started to go up until election day on November 7th or November 6th, because you can see like from September 30th to November 6th, it was pretty flat. September 30th, 53 cents. Basically, like November 4th, still 50 cents. Then, November 5th, 51 cents. So essentially, like November 7th, around the election day time, was when we actually started to go up. And if you look at the time between October 25th, when Bitcoin started going up, and like November 6th, 7th, when XRP started going up, you get about 2 weeks. Let's actually check for Cardano. Obviously, it is a very obvious point when it started going up, and that was November 5th, maybe like a day before XRP. But still, that's about 10 or 11 days after Bitcoin started going up. If you look at VeChain, whenever this VeChain graph actually decides to load, you can actually see like we started to go up right here, November 4th, about the same as Cardano, maybe a day before. And you still got about 10 days between when Bitcoin started going up and when VeChain started going up. Like when Bitcoin started going up, October 25th, VeChain has not started going up. We still had about a week and a half left. If you actually look at the Bitcoin search for the last 12 months, you can see a clear delineation. Like we didn't really go up at all from October 13th to 19th, to October 20 to 26, but from October 20 to 26 to November 2nd, we saw a clear delineation going up, and that just signals retail interest going up. So what about now for Bitcoin search terms? Bitcoin has actually gone up, but you can see from May 11th to 17th and to May 18th to 24th, Bitcoin interest actually went down as we crawled to the all-time high. So that signals that people are not about to FOMO into Bitcoin. Now that's retail, and May 18th to 24th is incomplete. And if you actually look at the US graph, we are slightly going up a little bit, but not all that much. Not really anything that would actually signal like an imminent upstreak or anything like that. You can see we're like slightly going up 36 to 38. We've been at 36 for like a couple of weeks now, and it's not like the rise basically October 2026 from 23 all the way up to 31. Like an up of 2 is still not as good as like a crawl up of actually 23 to 31, a crawl up of 8. And of course, the next week we went from 31 to 48. So just for the United States, like, it's pretty flat, slightly going up, which is good. But for worldwide, we're actually like in the last week, this week, we're actually slightly down. So the retail interest is not there right now compared to last time for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin starts going up now, according to our the chart from last time, altcoins still have about a week and a half, 2 weeks before they really start going up. But that's only according to last time. What if we go back further? And the one we have to look at is essentially this thing. Like around last time Bitcoin really started to come up was around September 12th, 2023. Obviously, you could say it's January 12th, but like, January 12th, that was like the absolute bottom, 16,000 for Bitcoin. And we kind of languished over the summer. And it was really around September 12th that 2023, that we decided to come up the time before that. And if you actually look at, like September 2023, let me just kind of like squeeze the timeline there. You can see that I'm talking about this here. You can see like, this junction right here, actually we didn't really start going up until about October 13th. We were still $26,000 on October 13th. By November though, we were at $35,000, $36,000 up here. And that was higher than any point in the summer. So basically like Bitcoin started going up October 15th or so, the time before that. What about, the other altcoins at that point? So if you actually look at 2023, September, October, I think we have to squeeze the graph a little bit. Squeeze the graph a little bit. And you look at, XRP had this, you can ignore this because this was basically caused by the lawsuit, like basically ending somewhat in 2023. And then they appealed, of course, but this was caused by that. So like XRP really didn't start going up until about October 13th. And that, my friends, is basically exactly when Bitcoin started going up. So XRP essentially matched Bitcoin almost. I think it was like maybe a day behind Bitcoin in October 23. Cardano, I think like in October 23, let's take a look at it. Switch this back a little bit. In October 23, like this was the bottom for Cardano coming up, October 17th. So it was like 2 or 3 days later. And obviously like the 2024 one, that was essentially caused by the election. That was the trigger. I think altcoins might have actually like been a little different if it wasn't for that specific election on when they actually decided to go up. Bitcoin was already crawling up about 1 or 2 weeks before the election. So if you look at 2023, 2024 for VeChain, and you look at when we actually started going up, you're going to see like October 19th or so. So VeChain being a smaller coin, it took a couple more days for it to start crawling. Obviously, it went up to like, 3.5 based on this graph, but that's a significant increase in that kind of time period. So, the one before it in September, October 23, that really, that honestly, realistically, like that almost happened at the same time or within 4 or 5 days of that come up. Indeed. So that's kind of like what happened before that. Now, if you want to take a look back all the way at 2021, we can actually do that as well because 2021 was a big, big surge. And we're not going to look at the second one because the second one was SBF and alts didn't really go quite as high. We're going to specifically look at the first one, but it's pretty hard to pinpoint where exactly we started to go up on this. I'm going to say around October 6, 2020. And it basically went up nonstop until April after that. So let's actually go look at around October 2020. Go back way further in time, obviously. Some of you may not remember this. Some of you may not have been around for this. But you can see like basically around October 4th or so, around this area, October 6th, October 4th, we were at $10,000. And then, like as we went we went up pretty fast after October 6th. That's when Bitcoin actually started to go up. So if you look at XRP in the same time period, you can see like what kind of delays there actually are. Obviously 2020. So you could say July, but then we went back down. So it didn't really start going up until about November 4th, whereas Bitcoin started going up around October 6th. So it was almost like a month delay or slightly more than a month delay before XRP shot up in 2020. For Cardano in 2020, you can see, yeah, we did go up a little bit over the summer, but Cardano essentially was a little different in 2020 because we had like Shelley and then Goguen come out. So this is not really a good graph. Cardano essentially went up like half a year before and never really came down. So it actually started in April. Now, I actually do think the 2023 gauge and also like this year's gauge is better than this 2020 gauge because Cardano had Shelley and Goguen and there was a lot of excitement around Cardano. So it acted different from the other coins. And obviously, like by the time you got to like really this rise here, this was actually in November. So like before this specific peak, it actually waned down. So you can actually say like, if you want to measure it according to all the other altcoins, it would actually start about like, I would say November 16th, which is almost a month and a half after Bitcoin really started. If you look at VeChain, obviously during the same time period, we go back to 2020. And VeChain, like in 2020, that was a little bit strange too. I'm not really sure why. Like it really started to go up, but it was still under a penny at this specific point. And it surged up to like 1.8, 1.9. But the real surge in VeChain came quite a bit later if you look at it, when it surged up to like, 25 cents or something. So the real surge, like you can see, like it started because this particular surge early in the year came down eventually. And the real surge didn't really start until about November 14th. So about a month and 10 days. So if you look at like the true surge in 2020, all these coins lag behind Bitcoin by about a month and 10 days. The 2023 surge, they began within 5 days. And like the 2024 surge, they began within the course of about a week and a half to 2 weeks. Let's actually look at the Bitcoin graph for the Bitcoin search volume for the last 5 years and see how that worked. Obviously, right now, the search volume hasn't really started going up, so we haven't really gotten that retail interest yet. Obviously, in 2024, it basically began right on time. And in 2023, it actually like began right on time too. We had this small surge right here. Of course, we didn't have the big surge until like January, February when the ETF was announced. But we did actually, you can see here, we did actually have the surge on about October 8th through 14th. And if you remember, that's almost exactly when Bitcoin started going up. And obviously, like you can see the Bitcoin, you can see like back in 2020, we really started getting like the surge back in October as well. So overall, the Bitcoin worldwide search volume, web search volume, matches a lot better to the Bitcoin surges than Bitcoin does with altcoins. Altcoins generally are actually delayed, at least by, like maybe 2 or 3 days, but more likely a couple of weeks to a month. So after you see like, if it acts like the majority, after you see Bitcoin, after you actually see Bitcoin search volume slowly crawl up, like, kind of this volume, maybe 2 weeks in a row or something, slowly crawl up, expect altcoins to surge then, or maybe 1 or 2 weeks afterward. Right now, since Bitcoin search volume is not going up yet, I think we are at least 2 or 3 weeks away from a really big altcoin surge. We could get a minor one that retraces like we did a week ago, but according to the charts, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks at least away from a big altcoin surge, even if Bitcoin breaks the all-time high, at least according to what we actually see here. If you look at the last year, now when did Bitcoin break 73K? Bitcoin actually broke like 73K like about the same time the altcoins started surging last year. But, without the presidential trigger this year, without like the presidential trigger this year, I think like it'll be more slow pace. So if there was like another big event, maybe like they will sign like a lot of the trade treaties and that will be the big event. But I don't think it'll be as big of a kicker as the election. So even if Bitcoin reaches its all-time high, I suspect that would have to be sustained for a week or two before altcoins go up. So I wouldn't expect right at like a massive surge starting right as Bitcoin hits the all-time high. I would expect it, if it can sustain it, maybe a week or two later. So like, analyzing like the graphs of like what happened in the past couple of runs or mini runs, I kind of expect that to actually happen this time around too. Could be wrong. There could be a big trigger event, but unless there's a big trigger event, I think that's kind of like how it's going to go. So hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, hit the bell notifications button, and I will see you guys later.